Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have an essential topic that every Linux administrator should know about. We're going to cover some basic Linux server security steps that you can take. So whether you're just starting on your journey of learning Linux administration or you're looking just to get some more practice under your belt, you are in the right place. In this video we're going to break down the fundamentals of server security in a way that is easy to understand for beginners. We'll cover everything from securing your SSH access to implementing basic firewall rules, and I'll even touch on some user management best practices. By the end of this video, you'll have the knowledge and confidence to keep your Linux server safe from potential threats. Server security is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. With cyber threats on the rise, it's crucial to fortify your server against potential attacks. One way to make sure our server will continue to work securely without future intervention is to enable automatic updates. Ubuntu's Package Manager app follows a well-established process for performing a system upgrade. Initially, you execute the apt update to refresh your package list. Then you would run apt upgrade to actually upgrade the systems on your. This is the manual way to do it. And while this will vary depending on the version of Ubuntu you're using, it will be the same essential process. To set this to run automatically for you, Ubuntu has a built-in tool called unattended-upgrade. Most Ubuntu servers will have this already installed by default. If you do not already have it installed, it's simple to install it. Simply run sudo apt install unattended-upgrades. As you can see on mine, it was already there. But to check the status of it, simply run sudo systemctl status unattended upgrades.service. And as you can see from mine, it is active and running. And it is enabled, which means it will restart whenever the computer restarts. Now, by default, it will try to update everything. So if you have something that relies on a specific version and you don't want it to update, or you're using a third-party repository, you may want to edit the config file for unattended upgrades. To do that, you simply do sudo vi/etc/apt/app.conf.d 50 unattended upgrades. Now this is the config file for the unattended upgrades. And as you can see from looking at this example, it has a lot of comments with a lot of details on how you can edit it and configure it for your environment that you're in. So if you do edit it, you're going to save it and then exit. And you'll need to restart the service in order for changes to take effect. And to do that, you'll simply run the sudo systemctl restart unattended upgrades.service command. And then we'll check the status, and it's back up. Now so far we've been doing everything as root. The root user in Linux is the same as the built-in administrator user in Windows. These users are powerful, and they can do anything they want on these machines. And while this is useful while doing certain administrative tasks, it's not good practice to perform daily tasks as the root user. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a limited user, and then we're going to add him to the sudo group so he can perform some administrative tasks. And to do that, we're going to simply run the add user command. Sudo add user, all one word, username, in my case, bmorgan. You have to set them up a password. And none of the rest of this is required, so you can fill in as little or as much as you want to. So as you can see, right now we have a limited user, bmorgan, and he's not in the sudo group, so he can't perform any administrative tasks. To add him to the sudo group, you simply do sudo usermod -a and g for primary group sudo. So now if I run id bmorgan, I see him in the sudo group. So now I switch users to be Morgan, and be Morgan, and I get this to run a command as administrator message, which shows that I am in the sudo group. And another good way to test this is to do sudo apt update, put in my password, and it ran without error, which means I am in the sudo group. So now I can still run some administrative task logged in as my user, and I have a failsafe in place to keep me from just completely destroying the server. And depending on the environment you're in, that may be required for some places. And if you're a Linux administrator at a business, you may have to add other limited users to the server. And so this is just good practice. Linux uses what are called SSH keys, which are similar to username and passwords, but they allow for single sign-on and automation tasks. And they are usually device-specific, which makes them more secure than a username and password. So first, we want to make sure we can log into our server as our limited user that we just set up. So to do that, simply open another terminal. If you're on Linux, it's going to look like this. If you're on Windows, you can always do PowerShell. And we'll go back to our SSH command, and I'm going to do this in PowerShell just so you can see it's the same. And you're going to put your username there that you just set up in first, and hit enter. It's going to ask if you're sure. We'll type yes, and we'll put in the password. Well, congratulations, you can log in as your limited user. So if you do not already have SSH keys set up, what you're going to do is on your host machine that you're going to be using to access your Linux server on. On Windows, you'll open another PowerShell terminal. On Linux, you'll open up another terminal window, but the command's going to be the same. On Linux, you're going to run make dir for make directory, tilde /.ssh. I'm just going to place it in my user's home folder, and I didn't realize it actually already existed on mine. And so if you didn't already have it and you just made yours, you would also want to add chmod 700 to the file to make it accessible by that user and that user alone. And then you simply use the command ssh-keygen to create the key. And you will keep everything the default that comes up. And here it was in PowerShell, and here it is in Linux. And as you can see, exact same process, keep everything the same there. And then to view the key that you just created, you're simply going to run cat. And that is your SSH public key that you will be sharing. Never share your SSH private key. That is for you and you alone. So now to copy this over to the server, what we're going to run is we're going to run ssh-copy-id Morgan. And it's going to ask for your password. And then it wants you to make sure that it was added. So we simply go back and run ssh-sb Morgan to that IP address. And if you get in without being prompted for a password, that means it was successful. So it's not very easy to copy your SSH keys from Windows 11 by PowerShell. So unless you have it SSH client, such as WSL on Windows, the easiest thing to do is to cat the public file and simply copy everything from the SSH down to another file. And then SSH into your server. And simply navigate to your .ssh folder. And if you look, there's a directory called authorized keys. What we're going to do is we're going to do sudo vi authorized keys, enter our password. And if you hit Control-N on your keyboard, it's going to take you to the very end of the file. Hit A to put the insert line right at the end, and then hit Enter to start a new line. and then we'll simply paste in the SSH key from our Windows machine. As you can see from the end of it, it says Windows 11 because that was the name of the machine. Hit escape and shift CC to save it. So now if we exit, run our SSH command again, we go right in without being prompted for a password from PowerShell. So at this point, if you're tired like me, you probably need a little bit of coffee, so I'm going to take a quick coffee break. So I'm back, and with coffee in hand. And so now that we have our SSH keys in there, and our SSH keys are device specific, so these users can remote in without entering a password, but only from those devices that there's a key for in the authorized keys folder. And only those users can use those keys. So what we're going to do next is we're going to harden our sshd configuration on our server. Specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to change the default port for SSH. We're going to disable remote access for root user, so a root user can't log in directly. I'll show you how to switch from your user, a sudo user, to a remote to the root user, if you ever need to. Sorry, the coffee burnt my tongue. We're going to set it up where you can only log in if you have a SSH key. You can't log in using a password. And we're going to set it up to close inactive remote inactive remote sessions. To do all this on our remote server, we're simply going to go. To do this on our remote server, we're going to simply go to our config file by doing sudo vi /etc/sshd_config. Put in our password. And here is our SSD. And here is our sshd config file. And you can look through it. There's a lot you can change. There's a lot you can set, and you can play with it and get it as strict as locked down as you want to, or have it as lenient as you want to. So first, we're going to change the SSH port from the default 22 by removing that comment. And we're going to set it to a random 55. I know, really original, right? And then we are going to set permit root login to no. And we're going to turn password authentication no. And we're going to uncomment client alive interval. And we're going to set it to 200. Every 200 seconds, it's going to send a null packet through the connection. And after 3 times of getting no response, it's going to designate that connection as being inactive, and it's going to close it. So we also need to uncomment client alive count, because that's that 3 count of 3 missed connections that close. So we'll save everything by hitting Shift CC, and you'll have to restart sshd for this to take effect by running sudo systemctl restart sshd. So now we'll test the new port connection from our Windows machine. So we'll go back to our SSH command, and at the very end we'll use the /port argument, which tells it to designate a certain port, and we did 55. We'll hit enter. We are now connected through Windows to our Linux server through port 55. So let's say you're Linux administrator for Company A, and Company A just hired this test user that you need to create a user profile for. And right now, the Linux server is set up where you can only come in through port 55, and you can only SSH in if your keys are already on the server. So how would you add this user to the server? That's pretty simple, actually. So first, as root user, so let's say you're logged in as you in your user profile. If you want to switch to root, you'll need to switch to your root to do this. So you simply do su-, and then that's going to be the root user's password. So now you're the root user on your server, on your Linux server. So we're going to do sudo add user, and this is going to be the new employee. We don't want to give them sudo rights, we just want to let them be able to access the server right now. We're going to call them new user. Just keep everything simple. Give them a password. Leave everything blank for now. And then as the root, we're going to switch user to the new user. And since you're root, you just do ssh dash, and it won't ask for a password, but you do have to specify who you're switching to. And so if you do a quick ls minus alrt of the new users folder, you see there's not currently an ssh file. So we're going to make dir.ssh, and we are going to change directory.ssh, all in one command. And now as the new user, we're simply going to run touch authorized keys and hit enter. And so now your part in the new user's profile is done. You will exit, going back to root. And then as root, you're going to change directory into that new user's profile by going to change directory /home/new user. And we'll do ls minus alrt, and you'll see his .ssh file. So we'll change directory into .ssh, do ls, there's authorized keys. So as the root, we're going to do sudo vi authorized keys, paste in his ssh keys into this authorized file for him. And for this example, I'm going to use my ssh key off my WSL instance in another virtual machine, just to prove that we can do this. And we're going to do ssh new user at IP address of our Linux machine. We're going to specify port 55. And it's going to log straight in without asking for a password, because the root US Linux administrator went in as root and put my SSH keys in my authorized keys folder, so they were already there. And to prove that I am the limited user, I'm going to do sudo update. I'm going to ask for the password. And it says the new user is not in the sudoers file, which is what we want right now. Now that we've edited the sshd config file and we've made our sshd tunnel more secure, another useful thing to do is to set up Ubuntu's uncomplicated firewall that is built. First, you need to enable it, and it's simply running sudo ufw enable. Say yes. And so now that it's enabled, you can do sudo ufw status. It says active. So now we need to specify. Now we need to specifically add the new port that we set up for SSH. So we'll do sudo ufw allow 22. Oh, we did 55, didn't we? And you'll see it says rule added. So this is a good starting point for Linux server security. And being security minded as you're starting Linux administration will put you ahead of most people in the field that you're going to meet. The real trick is to find the perfect balance between being secure and being able to use your work environment. And you can always build upon these basic steps that we went over today. If you need some help building your own Linux server, you can see this video here. If you have followed along with this video, comment down below how it went. I'll see you guys next time.